Okay, folks, before you see this video, I want to go over a thing or two with you. You know that I proclaim that I am a descendant of the Merovingian kings, okay? Now, let me explain something to you briefly. All the kings and queens of the earth that you have of today, and ever since they left Egypt, they are the direct descendants of the pharaohs, folks, is what they are, okay? And so, every one of them's of the devil except for the Merovingian kings, and that one line is of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. And the pharaonic blood lineage, folks, is not like you guys. It's nothing like you all. Now, when Sean talks about the Swiss here in a minute, and he shows you some things about the Swiss, I want you to keep in mind the Swiss are aristocracy, but here is the difference. They are the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth born sons of the aristocracy that had no inheritance. You see, with the aristocracy, the primogenitor is the one that inherits everything, and the sons that comes behind him inherits nothing. And so the Templars had to find their own kingdom, and they did that in Switzerland. They were the builders. They built commanderies all over France, all through Europe. Every high hill that they had a Templar commandery, and they were every bit as smart as the primogenitor. And so when watching this, I want you to keep in mind they are just as much pharaohs as the primogenitors are. And guys, they're the reason why, this stuff is the reason why they're ruling and you're not. This is the reason why they've got all the money and you don't. This is the reason why that they're ruling kingdoms and you're not. Is because this blood lineage is not like you. I'm not like you. I promise you 100% that I'm not like you guys. I don't even have the same skull you guys have, but you can't tell the difference between us and them, and you really don't know that this exists. So stay tuned and let me explain it to you, and I will show you what I'm talking about, okay? But I promise you, you will learn something. So watch this and let's go from there, okay?
Concerning Switzerland's violence, organized terror and hatred towards immigrants and other races. But there exists also scientific proofs that the Swiss are an entirely different species, nowhere else to be found in Europe. And I told you so. They are no Europeans, and Switzerland is the base of Pharaoh. Me personally have never witnessed so much evil, so many organized lies of such utterly mean intensity as in Switzerland. And this is what makes people out, what they have in their heads. And let me tell you, what the Swiss have in their heads is so very different from the rest of humanity that I might call their inhibitions alien in maybe more than one sense of the word. And the things we have in our minds are being confined by the skull, as in skull and bones, you might say. It's also the form and size of the skull that defines the size of the brain and its intellectual capacity, and even tendency for crimes can thus be predicted. And this is why Freemasons, who came out of the Templars who founded Switzerland, present the skull with square and compass for craniometry, because they know their skull and bones, I repeat, skull and bones, are different from ours. And this science of the human skull is called craniometry or cephalometry, and it has been discovered by science, doctors and professors, that the Swiss have skulls nowhere else to be found in Europe. thus maybe leading to the entirely different Swiss universe, highly predestined for organized crime. So in this scientific research by Dr. Ripley from America, it shows a cephalic index of Europe and of the world, which I'm going to show you later. And I'll put the link in the description, as I always do, so you can verify and examine the scientific analysis of the craniometrical map of Europe yourselves. And you can see by this craniometry that the Swiss are neither Germans, French or Italians, because Europeans don't fit these cranial characteristics. This is another species, either talking German, French or Italian. And there's even an official name for the Swiss skull called brachycephalic. Cephalic meaning concerning the skull, which is being seen from above, a relatively short and quite round skull, whereas the rest of the Europeans, seen from the top, have long skulls and not round, called dolichocephalic. So this one here, and I'm going to show you this on the cephalic map of Europe in a moment. This is the Swiss brachycephalic skull form, which is only be found in Switzerland in Europe. You're going to see that. This is European, the dolichocephalic or long skulls. So long as being seen from the top, long from here to here. And this is quite short and broader, like here in the back. Well, we've seen aliens like this, haven't we? This is going deep, folks. You better copy it first, download it, because I've got a feeling the Swiss are going to delete it very, very quickly. And then it's gone. So here's a cephalic map, cephalic index of Europe. And here where it's black, it's like a cancer in the middle of Europe, and it is a cancer. There's a high concentration of, for Europe, alien skull forms. Alien as they don't belong to Europe, you can see that. They're not here, not even in the south, a little bit in Italy. Well, here's Rome. But here's a very high concentration, it says. They're not from here, you can see it. No. Definitely not. The cephalic map of Europe shows a neat distinction starting right at the Swiss border, where on both sides of the border around Switzerland the people have entirely different skulls, exactly showing that in Switzerland there's an entirely different species with different skulls and what's inside these skulls. So you can read it again here of the cephalic index of Europe. Where it's black, it means broad skulls, and they're not European. So here, this here is Switzerland here. These are the borders. Here's France, Germany, Vorarlberg, where they are Swiss. So you can see it stops right neat at the border, here in France and here in Switzerland. They have a completely different skull form. It's like chopped off, neat, clean cut at the border. Here. So, and these parts are Alsace here, where they replaced the original population. As I told you, they're ethnic Swiss here, as in the north of Italy here, and in Austria, Vorarlberg. I'm a bit surprised it doesn't show black here in the south of Germany. Very surprised. But it is dark anyway. It's not like here, like the rest of Europe is white, long skulls. So it's like a cancer in the middle of Europe, and they behave like a cancer. They are the cancer of Europe. So, well, except for those regions of what I told you, the ethnic Swiss are living, where Swissy replaced the original inhabitants during the 30-Year War, when Swiss mercenaries perpetrated a total genocide on the original inhabitants of Alsace in eastern France, Vorarlberg in Austria, they call them the Xieberger, because they talk like in Switzerland, northern Italy and southern Germany, where they speak in fact Alemannic Swiss German today, and want to create that great Swiss empire, including that ethnic Swiss buffer zone, of which I've already told you all in some of my previous films. So here are the irrefutable scientific proofs of all I told you before, which even scientific craniometry double backs up. So if we look at the cephalic index of the world, you can clearly see that this is the place where the Swiss come from. Here. Mongolians, Genghis Khan. And they got their little concentration here in the middle of Europe, in the Alps. From a place called also Khazaria, the Khazars. This is where the Khazars went to in the middle of our beautiful Europe and destroying it bit by bit. And when I translate Khazar in Demotic Pharaonic, there's Ka, the living soul, and Sa, the king or pharaoh. So Khazar means soul king. Well, these black dudes will like that, who think that the pharaohs were black, the soul kings. Meaning that these royal bloodline of pharaoh is there. Their souls of kings are there. And they went to Switzerland, the base of all evil, where the Khazars went to, and the Mongolians, and who are in fact of pharaonic origin. I mean, how could the Mongolians organize anyway? They never with Genghis Khan in such a way, you know, that they're completely incapable by themselves to organize in such a way Genghis Khan did. So they must have had another brain behind it, you know, and that's pharaonic. And they went to different places in the world, like Khazaria and Mongolia. So this is concerning the skulls, and this is very scientific. This is where the Swiss come from. This is why they don't want to belong to the European community. And I tell you, they rule over the European community with their Templars. So the skull forms, because they mix with the Mongolians, the Swiss did, concerning the craniometry. I mean, it's there. These are solid proofs, eh? They're very, very solid. This is where they come from. This is where they came from. This is the original Swaziland. They're not European. It's a cancer, a black cancer. You can see that, a black cancer in the middle of our Europe, bringing 2 world wars, a 30-year war, killing everybody, etc., etc. And I tell you, I know how they are. There are no Europeans. I've never experienced something alike. So here again in Wikipedia about craniometry, here, if I scroll down, this is quite interesting. Some of you racists might like this, but I tell you, it's wrong. So here it talks about the Jews and brachycephalic. So, yeah. So the only ones having the same skulls are the Jews. So the Swiss in fact have Jew skulls of the brachycephalic order. Now, how come the Swiss and the Jews share the same cephalometry? Whereas the Swiss have always terrorized and chased the Jews, forcing them to live in the 2 villages of Endingen and Lengnau, which I've already shown you in my other video, right at the German border, only forcing them to wear the yellow Jew hat in the Middle Ages and other Nazi-like Swiss measures. Well, why? Well, this is the pharaonic link. So I filmed it in this video here 2 years ago, when I went filming in those 2 Jew villages, Lengnau and Endingen. And the Jews finally disappeared entirely from Switzerland. as they were completely terrorized. So in spite of the fact they have the same skull form, they don't have the same thing in their heads. And this is what the Swiss forced them to wear in the Middle Ages, this round yellow thing, like the yellow star, and a yellow Jew hat. So they finally got fed up with it and left. But why do they have the same skull form? Oh, I'm going to explain it to you now. The Jews were 410 years prisoner of Pharaoh, had their women raped by Pharaoh, and the Swiss had their women raped by the aristocracy through the prime noctis, or the Lord's first rite, or also you might say the first night, thus massively spreading Pharaoh's genetics in Pharaoh's base, Switzerland, and they were raised by Pharaoh, as I've already told you so. So here's another particularity of the Swiss craniometry. It says alpine. This is the alpine skull form, which is brachycephalic. But if you look at the rear of the head, there's another difference. This is Nordic, this is bump here, or Mediterranean, it's the same, or Atlantic. Here's nothing, it just goes straight over into the neck, which is the same in the East Baltic, where you go to the Khazar region. So it's only alpine in central Western Europe. It's only alpine having this, together with the brachycephalic skull form. You remember the black cans in the middle of Europe. So nowhere else this particular brachycephalic head form can be found in Europe, except Switzerland and the ethnic Swiss parts. The Swiss are definitely not what we think they are. They are no real Europeans, and maybe even something completely else. As I've witnessed on many occasions in Switzerland, that they seem to understand each other without talking and just through the look of an eye. They always seem to stare at people as if they see right through and detect something they don't like. And there are many things they don't like in Switzerland, on which they use their laws of silence, organizing through some creepy look of the eye among themselves. The biggest races in the world are in fact illegal immigrants themselves in our Europe, hiding on top of the mountain with all their looted gold and their Swiss short heads.
All right, folks, before I get off on my picture of my daughter here, I want to go over a thing or two that Sean said. The reason why that you have those skull forms that shows up in Switzerland and you don't have them show up anywhere else, like I said, you've got a conglomeration of the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh born sons, the families from all these royal blood lineages that all come together and made the kingdom of Switzerland. So there's a significant amount of enough people there to leave a trace of that. And you see the reason why it's not showing up anywhere else. You take like Windsor Palace, for instance, in England. How many people's in Windsor Palace as part of that family? Maybe 75 or something? They're not thousands like they are with the Templars, okay? The Templars are really the same thing as today's Freemasons is what they are. They're the ones that said the stone in which the builders, the Freemasons rejected, has become a rock of offense and a stumbling block. You see that all throughout the Bible. But anyway, another thing too, he was talking about the Jewish blood lineages running parallel and congruent with the pharaonic blood lineages of the pharaohs because of their being in Egypt as long as they were. That's true, but there's something else that Sean's not taking into account, and Of course, Sean is a historian. He's not so much a Bible-read person. But you have to keep in mind, when the 12 sons of Israel were fathered by Jacob, he fathered those kids by Rachel's handmaidens, Bella and Leah. And those girls were Egyptian handmaidens, and their daddy was a pharaoh. So now you know the secret behind why this Illuminati that runs Hollywood that you think is Jewish is so smart. They're not Jews, they're pharaohs, okay? That's why they got a pyramid that represents them. Some of you may not know that. But it doesn't have anything to do with anti-Semitic. It's nothing like that. It's the Jewish blood lineage gets blame for a lot of things, guys, and it's not them, it's the pharaohs. They're the ones that's doing this stuff. It's not Jews that's doing it. A lot of people will blame the Jews for it, and it's not the Jews, it's the pharaohs that's doing it. Because that blood lineage is running congruent. With the Jewish blood lineage. And another thing too, these people that has this blood lineage, they're blonde-headed and blue-eyed, guys. They're not dark-skinned and black-headed like you see these pictures of Egypt. They're not. The pharaohs were blonde-headed and blue-eyed, trust me. Aryan, like the Aryan race in Nazi Germany, Aryan, in Greek, means children of the sun. Like Prince William, okay? But anyway, this is a picture of my daughter. And as you can see, guys, she's got this kind of skull. And it's really well defined with her. I mean, really, really well defined. Matter of fact, when she was first born, the doctor thought that something just wasn't right. But at the same time, they told us that structurally there wasn't anything wrong with her, or she wasn't retarded, or anything like that, or had any kind of disease that was identifiable. They just couldn't figure out why her skull looked that way. We had to take her to every doctor in the world because they demanded of it. They wanted to know, why is this kid's skull made like this? Why? Finally, we took her to a craniometrical expert that was in Roanoke, Virginia. And for some reason, this guy kind of knew what was going on, but he just laughed a little bit. He probably belonged to some of the secret societies and knows things that you and I don't know. But anyway, he laughed a little bit and he said, the only thing I have to say is she's okay, she's not like other people, and she's going to be a genius. That's what they said. He said anyway. So you can see, guys, where we're descendants of the Merovingian kings, we don't have the same skull you have. And what's in our skull is not the same thing either. Now, we don't have the deviant things that these others do because that's the devil blood lineage. Remember, the Merovingian kings is the only line of kings that was here on the earth that was the descendants of Mary Magdalene and Christ. It was King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table, folks, the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail. Folks, Jesus was not a Jew. He was the Son of God. God was not a Jew. What does it say in Isaiah? For out of Egypt I know my son. He wasn't a Jew. And his mother was loaded down with pharaonic blood lineage anyway from those handmaidens, and then his father was completely of the Pharaoh blood lineage, as all these angelic angels and God and everything is. That's the reason why, guys, they can't figure out some of this stuff, some of this geometry and everything else, and how they got some of these blocks up where they did and everything. They can't figure that stuff out because it took such a brilliant mind to do that you got a group of commoners trying to figure it out and they just can't do it. Even though they're kind of smart, they just can't do it. But anyway, what I'm going to do is, I want you to see my video tomorrow night so bad, which, by the way, I'm under the weather a little bit. If I sound croupy, I'm sorry. I want you to see my video so bad that a little bit later today I'm going to do a video, and I want to do some stuff on that video that none of you can do at all. None. And I'll prove it. And no tricks. Matter of fact, I'll prove that I can't trick it. And that way you'll know that what's in our heads is something very different than what's in yours. Okay? Thank you for watching my video.